that we do need an international agreement in order to actually tackle climate change seriously. And we know that governments can act if they want to. And if we have military action, all resources go towards military action. We had a financial crisis, we put in trillions of pounds and dollars into saving the banks. It is possible to solve the climate change problem if the politicians want to take it seriously. And our job in civil society is to keep the pressure up upon them. And I think they would love us not to be in Cancun or involved in any of the negotiations or discussions. It keeps the pressure off of them. And it seems to me climate change is too important an issue to be left solely to the politicians. It's a matter that affects all of us as citizens. We all have to be involved in it. And I think the benefit for Bolivia and the Cochabamba conference was that Bolivia just accounts for 0.2% of global emissions, and in the grand span of things, what can you do about it? It's actually creating a momentum which involves a large range of countries, and it's drawing attention to some of the key issues that need to be addressed. Climate change has been caused by capitalism, and our method of production is not going to be solved by capitalism, and the emission carbon trading schemes and the like, there has to be fundamental change, and it means the developing world has to put in something like 6% of gross national product in the funding, just transition and adaptation if we're going to take climate change seriously. And I think the Bolivians in Cochabamba are showing the way to the rest of the world and the social movements about the need for campaigning in a very serious way. And I think they're raising their voices so loudly that they're going to have to be heard internationally. It's difficult, I know, but we need to act.
We'll try to be brief now. I don't think you have to tackle the problem of climate change in a multidisciplinary way. It's not only an environmental thing. It's in definitive, it's a security thing. It's a social thing, it's a development thing. We cannot depend on the decision on only 27 countries. We are 192 countries in this world. The decision of Bretton Woods and the economical model were made by 45 countries. We are depending now on 27 countries because they have all the power. The military spending is increasing, but there is no money in order to save this planet. And for me, everything is terms of rights and respect. I think developing countries have the right to develop, to feed their people, and to have a good life. Not only a partying life like High School Musical. And if you compare teenagers between both worlds, the teenagers in Africa, in America, really are working to feed each day in the field, in contact with the nature, not just going to high school to have parties and friends. Since we are children, we have the responsibilities with our families and with the world. So I'm asking you to take the challenge, as Asad says, and all the people here said before, and move on forward, work together, and make this happen. Make the rulers of our countries to take the responsibility with our votes, with what we ask them for, and to fulfill the promise to hear their people. We are asking them for that because we need it. I asked in some panel the people to close their eyes and for just a minute imagine to wake up to a nightmare and have nothing. Just remember Haiti. Those people someday open their eyes to a nightmare reality after the earthquake. Poverty, nothing to have. The same happened after a flood, a drought, or whatever. So we are talking about of living and dying. The United States, because they are the rule makers, always have tricks in order to make their hegemony work. Blame our countries as coca leaf producers, drug producers, in order to intervene our countries and to stop us on our position. But we won't quit on that. I think this is a commitment we have with our people a commitment Mr. Morales had when he got the presidency, and the commitment all we work together with him in order to save this planet and to change this artificial way of life.
Okay, 3 points. Kyoto is not perfect. I said that earlier, and I say it again. And the point is, it is legally binding in the sense that countries have to take on targets and they have to stick by it. The issue is whether the existing compliance mechanism is strong enough. Canada gets away with it because the compliance mechanism is not being enforced in a proper way. So it's not like the WTO. There's no method for dispute resolution. There's no appellate body. There is no sanctions you can take. And this is something that needs to be rectified. But to say that it is not legally binding is not true, because it says there very clearly it's a legal treaty. It says that the Annex 1 parties have to commit, and this is what they have to commit and they have to abide by. If they are not doing it, then we have to expose them and do whatever we need to do and how to improve that. The second point about intellectual property, I would actually like to encourage you to go to the website of the Third World Network where I come from. We have papers which are there about it. And why it's a concern is even in relation to wind energy, for instance, we understand that there are patents, multiple patents in some of these technologies. And what the developing countries are saying is that the price of this has to be affordable. And a lot of the times, intellectual property can be a barrier in relation to accessibility and in relation to manufacturing capability. So it's not just about developed countries selling their technologies, but that's not transfer. Transfer also means that developing the ability of developing countries to produce the technologies themselves. And so that's why intellectual property is an issue. In relation to the final question about trade, now I'm not for one who advocates that everybody should drop every other issue and jump on the climate bandwagon. Please, for God's sakes, do not do that. We fight on all fronts, and this is where we need to unite the forces. And for an organization like the Third World Network, at the moment, if you ask me what is the most critical issue, I'd say this: the economic partnership agreements that the EU is negotiating with Africa, where it is really undermining Africa and killing Africa in terms of jobs, poverty, and agriculture, and creating a situation where when the climate hits, they are even less resilient to cope with it. So it's a development crisis caused by the trade rules which are unjust, the World Trade Organization rules which are unjust. So we fight there for trade justice. We fight for economic justice, even on the financial architecture. Very few of us are paying attention to what's happened in terms of the finance, the IMF, the World Bank, and how they have screwed countries around the world. And so it's a huge problem. So what we're seeing is our fronts and battles are on all fronts. We need to unite and come together in a way that's far more effective to deal with the structural causes. So it's not about one or the other, it's about fighting on all fronts.
First of all, Friends of the Earth, we're an international federation. We're grassroots, the largest grassroots network in the world. We have 77 member groups, overwhelming majority of them based in the south. So we have a strategy that does do the inside, outside, and the outside. And we fight on very, very real practical solutions. So here in the UK, at the moment, we have got a campaign around the food bill to try and stop, the import of soy that feeds our meat consumption, to be able to stop, and by tackling that, to stop the deforestation, which is driving, local farmers and local communities in Paraguay and from the Amazon basin. We're working with the trade unions in terms of our low carbon economy. We've won a massive victory on feed-in tariffs and being able to allow communities to be able to generate renewable energy. We're fighting for a green investment bank and to ensure that there's adequate funds in the green investment fund. We're fighting against corporate lobbying. We have a big campaign at a European level about vested interests to try and stop them at a European level. We're looking at and discussing how do we talk, what do we mean when we talk about green jobs. So I think there's lots and lots of this is just Friends of the Earth, but all of the NGOs, all of the trading, there's lots of different local campaigns and in specific campaigns, all of them trying to take on specific issues. So I think there's a lot out there. What we're talking about is how do we bridge. Some campaigns and some You know, there's a global campaign which we're working on at the moment around, you know, trying to just specifically target the World Bank in terms of around climate finance. And where there's a whole bunch of new actors coming in, you know, both from the south and the north, WDM, Friends of the Earth, Jubilee, South Via Campesina, different people like that saying, that's a battle. If we fight that battle, it allows us to create the force to be able to win other battles. So people are choosing fights and battles all over the place and showing solidarity in terms of that. I'm just going to end by saying, you know, somebody said about the importance of the UNFCCC. You know, we shouldn't be bothered about the importance of the UNFCCC. You know, I always think that the people who would most like us to ignore the UNFCCC is the rich countries, because you know what they would much prefer? They'd much prefer that there wasn't 192 countries, that there wasn't Bolivia being able to stand there and say, they'd much prefer it was the G20, the Major Economies Forum. They much prefer it was the bilateral agreements, exactly like they've done in terms of the economic partnership agreements around trade. That is their preferred model of dealing with climate. And you know, bilateral, away from transparency, away from multilateralism. That's why, imperfect as it is, we have to protect that system, because that's the only place where every poor country, every developing country has a voice. And there is the only place where Bolivia has a voice. And at the moment, our champions are Bolivia and the ALBA countries, and that's why we have to make sure that that system.
No, I just wanted to, I forgot to mention about one small piece of information for those of you who are skeptics of international negotiations. There was a very good outcome out of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Yes. A couple of things. There is a regime now in relation to the excess and benefit sharing on biopiracy. It's not perfect, but it's better than what exists at that nothing exists at this moment. The second thing is, a disaster was averted. And this was also through Bolivia and also the Philippines and others, where they were going to introduce innovative financing mechanisms, creating green development mechanism, like the clean development mechanism for biodiversity. Developing countries fought back, and that entire proposal got scrapped. Multilateralism prevailed, and it did work.
You can follow on the World Development Movement's and Jubilee Debt Campaign's No New Debt campaign. We're fighting funding going through the World Bank. We want it through the UNFCCC. What's happening now is our government, the UK government, is refusing to grant any money to the to the UN Adaptation Fund. They're putting it all through the World Bank, which is actually going to offer funding for developing countries, including Bolivia, in the form of loans rather than grants, pushing them further into debt, which is incredibly unjust. You can sign Bolivia's global referendum on climate change, which would be fantastic. Join all of the solidarity campaigns on Monsanto, RBS tar sands. You can join those movements outside. That is building the alternatives, the transition town movement. There's lots of grassroots movements. FO is doing some great stuff in this area. And you can join on December the 4th the climate march here in the UK to show solidarity with those who are in Cancun about the talks. WDM has a table over here. There's lots of information over there. Our panelists may stick around for a few minutes. I can't guarantee it. But thank you again, everyone, for your time.